So I'm wetting the paper with a 1-inch flat brush with some clean water. If you notice, there's no photograph and there's no drawing. So I'm just working from my imagination to paint this semi-abstract seascape. So I'm wetting both the sky area and the sea area and leaving a sort of dry gap on the horizon line. And I've done a little bit of upcycling here. I've actually used the strut at the back of the picture frame I recently used, where I hung it on the wall, so I didn't actually need to use this part. So what I've decided to do is paint with it a bit like I would with a plastic card. So I've dipped it in to the French ochre, the brown oxide, the Prussian blue, and a little bit of the black. So I've actually got a little part of each colour on this little wooden strut here, and I'm just sort of painting on the dry area and letting the paint run into the wet area, so you get all these lovely accidental sort of results. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but I'm just allowing the paint to kind of flow and just to see what kind of catches my eye. And sometimes I'll sort of spray some and sometimes I'll leave it be, and it all depends, and you just go by your eye, and it's actually a really nice creative thing to do. So you could choose 4 colours. If you don't have these colours, you could use something like raw sienna, a burnt sienna maybe for the brown oxide, and a phthalo blue or an ultramarine for the blue, and Paynes grey for the black. So I'm spritzing now just to get the paint moving a little, just to see what happens. And as you saw there, I'm spritzing a little bit more, and it's just ordinary tap water. I'm tilting the other way now and spritzing again just to get the paint mixing, and they blend together here as well. And I'm going to have the top right hand side as the sky, and what I'm using there is my framing tape. You can use another object just to allow your painting to lean and tilt if you don't want to keep holding it. I'm just using this flat 1-inch brush. It's clean and it's damp, and I'm just sort of catching the water as it goes to the edge of the tape there, and I'm just really going to give my painting a really big tilt. It's not quite vertical here, but it gets all the paint moving and blending as well. I'm just using my flat brush here and applying the Prussian blue on its own, damp into damp, and just still tilting, getting it all to flow. And I'm just applying that now to the sort of horizon area and a little bit to the middle of the sky. I want to keep that sort of right hand area. It's actually the left hand area when you turn it the right way up, but I want to keep that quite light so it sort of fades off. So I'm just spritzing again just to get the paint moving to the sort of top of the sky there and give it some direction as well. So I'm almost tilting diagonally sometimes as well, just to really get it moving. And it's fun to do, and the great thing is you hardly have to touch your painting with brushes. You're just sort of spritzing and applying it with plastic card. And I'm just using my paper towel now just to mop up the paint there. You might want to use an old rag or just have an old towel there to catch all of the paint and the water as well, but keep tilting. Don't just do it for a couple of seconds. Take your time with this, enjoy it, just watching the paint flow. So I'm just using the Spritzer bottle again just to spray the bottom half of the painting. You can wet this part with a large soft haired brush as well. And I'm tapping into the French ochre. You can use raw sienna, and I'm just applying it to the bottom half of the painting. Now I have to admit, I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this. I just like to experiment, just to kind of just let go and just see what happens. So these could be rocks, it could be a sandy beach. I'm not quite sure at the moment. And I'm just sort of making marks to sort of create the impression maybe of a shoreline. And I've added a little bit more of the Prussian blue, and I'm hoping it'll run a little bit. It's not really running as much as I'd like, but not to worry. Sometimes you'll find with your watercolour paper, it dries really quickly. So you might have to give it a little bit of encouragement by spritzing it. So I'm actually applying here, still with that wooden strut from the back of a framed picture. some black and some of the transparent brown Oxide. You can use burnt umber or burnt sienna with some Paynes grey or ultramarine. Use the colours that inspire you. Use your favourite colours. So I'm using my plastic card now and I'm applying it to the water area. Maybe paint some more rocks with the brown Oxide, some of the black there, and I'm applying this sort of creamy tubed paint to the wet surface. So the wet surface is diluting the paint, and I'm applying this brown colour with the black as well to the sort of rocky shore area, and also applying some Prussian blue and black to the horizon area. Sometimes when you spritz and spray, it sprayed a lot of those marks that I made earlier away. So I'm just applying some more paint, damp into damp, and tilting as I go. And as you can see, I've still got that framing tape underneath just to keep my painting tilted. And I'm spritzing now the sort of foreground area and tilting downwards there, getting everything sort of running and mixing to create sort of an atmospheric sort of look. And I'm spritzing the rocks on the right as well, so they don't look too definite. And again, I'm not sure where this is going. I'm just seeing what happens. One of the secrets to watercolour painting is not to fiddle, not to overwork. And so even though I'm painting something from my imagination that's semi-abstract, I'm still sticking to those rules, not to overwork. I'm just using my brush now to sort of move some of that sort of thicker paint around and add a little bit as well. So I'm just sort of painting with this flat brush. One of the things I find helpful is to have a little basin there to catch all your paint when you're spritzing it off. And I'm just spritzing off some of the foreground now with my spritzer bottle, just to get back some of the light. I felt I lost a little bit of light. So that's quite nice. I'm just letting it tilt here, literally vertically, just to kind of almost spritz and wash off that paint. And the little plastic box there will collect it so you don't have as much mess. I've decided to use some salt. This is sea salt, but you can use table salt, and I'm applying it to the foreground area onto the damp paint, and I'm going to allow it to dry naturally. And what it does, it absorbs the watercolour to create light textures. So you'll see that once the painting has dried naturally. So I'm using some grey brush, so you can use black or brown. And I'm going to apply this to the rocky area here onto the damp surface. As you can see there, it's created quite a nice effect. And I'm using the plastic card now to lift off the damp paint. And it's really nice because you can see some of the kind of underpainting, the staining. The Prussian blue is a bit of a staining blue. So the best way to do this is when the paint is damp. Don't do it when it's too wet. And obviously if it's too dry, you may need to re-wet it again. But it's a wonderful way of creating rocks and textures there. I'm going to allow my painting to dry naturally. Wow, the salt has created some wonderful textures there, and you can see some colours underneath. It gives it a lovely glow. I'm really pleased with that. So I'm brushing off the salt now with my paper towel. I'm going to use some white gouache. You can use white watercolour. And I'm going to use the bottom of a tube of paint, and I'm going to print wet on dry some of the white just along the sort of water's edge there to give a little bit of sparkle and light to my painting. I'm now using some paper towel to mask out the sky and the distance there, and I'm using an old toothbrush with slightly sort of watered down white gouache, and I'm spattering the white paint to create some light and textures in the foreground. I'm just removing some of those white blobs that I wasn't keen on there with my paper towel. So the painting is dried. I'm just removing the washi tape. It comes off so well. And I'm going to remove the top sheet now from the gummed pad. So there's a little opening there, and I've just removed the painting and just giving you a close up here. I'm really pleased with it. It's created some lovely sort of colours and textures and light, very atmospheric. So I hope you have been inspired by this tutorial and that you'll have a go at painting a semi-abstract seascape or landscape using some of these techniques. If you have any questions about this tutorial, please put them in the comments section. And if you'd like to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, where you'll get updates of my latest tutorials. And if you'd like to get access to my exclusive tutorials, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? Details about the membership can be found in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.